Previously on the BEASTMAM series, there were shapes. There were also wires. Today, there will be more shapes and also wires. What's up, pretty people? This is Bins signing in for the 25th video in the Shapes BEASTMAM series. Welcome, everybody. Last time, we took a little sidebar to talk about a thing I call pentapieces. What are pentapieces? Well, I've made an entire video about it, so if you don't know, just go watch that video because I'm not going to explain it again, right? Today, we're just going to start at that pentapiece setup in the BEASTMAM and continue to the next item we bump into, which is a lane redirection module. We've talked about virtual lane redirection and why you might need it back when we spoke about the decoder's clock, so we're just going to brush over it this time. Remember, we are looking at the part of the physical production lines that produces flat pieces. The reason I decided to build a lane redirection module here has to do with the way I set up the physical combiner units. Let's zoom or pan to those. All right, there they go. So I remember mentioning at some point that these combiner units are limited in their bypass capabilities. In cases where a given piece has fewer than 4 quadrants, these combiner modules aren't the best at coping. They've got some bypass mechanisms built in, but they can't handle just any random selection of input lanes. For example, if only the top lane is used, the top input lane, this one right here, then yeah, this machine will clog. It's as simple as that. It won't work. And I will admit that this is a bit of a spaghetti fest. There are definitely more elegant ways to handle this, but the thing is, I wanted to use this space right here, this space on the wiring layer to set up unrelated wiring. So I wanted to keep this combiner module as wireless as possible so it wouldn't interfere with the stuff I wanted to build here. And now, in order to get around this combiner bypass issue, I decided to shift the center of gravity to the input wires instead. More precisely, I decided on a system that, in case the input shape has fewer than 4 quadrants on it, it would automatically prioritize certain lanes over others, so that in turn, the combiner units would always get inputs that it could cope with. The underlying problem here is that we are working with a flat piece of up to 4 quadrants, and in order to isolate those quadrants, you need a virtual cutter. But if you have fewer than 4 quadrants on that input shape, then the virtual cutter is kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get, right? And that kind of throws a wrench into our combiner setup, which isn't equipped to handle all of that. So I built a lane sorter module at the start of the process, right here. Now, in hindsight, I did eventually manage to simplify and compress my wiring right here so that I technically could have built a smoother bypass system for the combiner modules after all. But by that time, you know, the factory was taking shape, I was confined for space on the physical layer, and frankly, I couldn't be bothered anymore, so that's the way it stayed. The lane sorter module itself, and now we're going to zoom out again, go back to the lane sorter module itself, and zoom in again. Now, so the lane sorter module itself is less complicated than the one we saw earlier in the cycler module, because this wiring pertains to the physical factories, and it doesn't really matter here if they are tick precise or not. So I saved myself that trouble. Now, I propose we throw in a few shapes and see how the lane sorter works, right? So we're going to start off with a shape with one layer. Let's put it in the bottom left, let's say, green circle or something. There we go. hit unpause, and we are going to get the top lane in this case, which is convenient. How about putting it in the top left corner? Let's see what that does. We're going to take the top left lane again. All right. Let's put it here. Well, this is interesting, actually. It back in the machine, when we talked about the rotator module, it is also going to rotate this shape, apparently. Now, to be brutally honest, I don't know why it does that, but in the end, it works. So I decided not to care very much about that. Okay, let's see what happens if we put it in the bottom right corner. Yeah, so if we get just one quadrant, automatically the first one will be used. The top lane will be used because the rotation mechanism kicks in somehow. Okay, so let's try two shapes, see what happens. Here we use the top two. How about this? All right, so here we do use the top one and the third lane. And what that is going to translate into is that this lane right here, it is going to be, well, it's going to be redirected onto the second lane. So what we do very simply is run this lane here, and we're going to use this input to determine if this signal is allowed to pass onto this lane, yes or no. In this case, well, it's not allowed because this lane is occupied, it's occupied, and it cuts the flow of this shape. And at the same time, it's going to open up this transistor. So this one stays where it is. And then in the next step, it gets compared to the second lane. The second lane is empty, in which case this transistor is blocked and this transistor is opened up. And that's how that's redirected. Now, let's ignore this bit for the time being. I have some lane crossing here so that in the end, this is the quadrant that pertains to the top lane. And this is the quadrant that pertains to the second lane. And that is in function of, oh, well, it's not very demonstrative if the quadrants aren't smelted, obviously. So let's get back. Let's get back, and let's... Oh, well, there's nothing to smelt. Okay, next example. Again, we're going to use the top lanes here. So that's also a poor example. Let's keep on trying stuff until we find something. All right, so this one, we're going to smelt this shape entirely, okay? Okay, so now this is a good example. So now we have the second lane, the third lane, and the fourth lane. They get redirected to the first, the second, and the third. Okay, and that is going to mean that, let's unpause again. We are not going to use this lane right here. Okay, and yeah, the shapes move in. This one does have a bypass, but only if we use the bottom lane and not the top one. So with this lane sorter module, long story short, I ensure that we use only the input belts that allow this machine to bypass, that allow these shapes to bypass the machine if necessary. That's how that works. All right, so there we go. A lane sorting on the wiring layer to make up for what could basically be described as a poorly built combiner unit. And that already brings us at the end of this video, actually. It's a shorter one this time, and I apologize if you expected more. But I feel like not every video should be equally long or tackle equally complicated topics. It's nice to take a breather sometimes. However, next video, we're going to look at how we put last video's penta pieces to good use, and after that, strap in for another doozy, as we will be going over the filters that toggle whether the shapes need to be sent into the combiner and smelter unit or not, and whether they need to be cut or not. So these filters right here. And that's definitely something to look forward to. So if you're eager to find out, then as always, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. If you like this video, leave a thumbs up, and if you have anything to comment, that's what that section is there for. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon, and until then, stay beautiful. Cheerio!